This is Echoes, a U-Krant podcast. In it, Christien Boomsma, Rob van der Wal, and me, Tom Wilcox, introduce you to remarkable people and extraordinary events from 4 centuries of UG history. From persecuted Scottish students fleeing to 17th century Groningen to a Russian spy seducing a UG physicist. This is A Russian Spy, about Finnish PhD student Runar Gåsström, who was brought to Groningen in 1954. Was he really a spy, or just a failed scientist? There was nothing he could do. Hendrik Casimir felt a little awkward calling in his secretary to give her the letter she had to type out for him. But the Philips top executive had no choice. He could not comply with the request of his Groningen friend and colleague, Hendrik Brinkman. Dear Brinkman, he wrote in December 1957, I regret to inform you that there are serious objections to Gåsström's appointment at Philips. These have to do with general rules, about which there is probably little I can do. I am doubtful that he can be accommodated in the Netherlands. Hendrik Casimir, a well-known superconductor expert in the 1930s and 1940s, was keen to please his friend. But hiring this man? No, he couldn't do that. Brinkman, in turn, felt responsible for his protégé, Runar Gåsström. He had brought him to Groningen in 1954 to do a PhD on supposedly groundbreaking research. But now he could no longer keep him employed. Brinkman himself had been a professor of experimental physics in Groningen since 1950. He, too, had a great reputation. He was the one who arranged for the establishment of the Nuclear Physics Accelerator Institute, which was one of the UG's showpieces for many years. He was also the man who made Groningen compete internationally in the field of nuclear physics. But it was also the time of the Cold War, of tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States. A time of spies like Klaus Fuchs, who had been convicted in 1950. He had passed on information about the development of the atomic bomb to the Russians. Nuclear physics, in short, was a very sensitive subject. But Brinkman had great faith in Gåsström's research plans to develop a pulse height analyzer, PHA, based on cathode ray tubes, a kind of predecessor of the modern computer. After a short exam, he had first given him the title of doctoral student, so that he could get a PhD at all. Then he had introduced him to several leading physicists, including the above-mentioned Philips top executive Casimir. It had been because of Brinkman that Philips had decided to invest fully in Gåsström's work, and also provide him with state-of-the-art transistors. But now, 4 years later, there was still no dissertation. And even worse, Gåsström was under investigation by the Inland Security Service. It was feared that he was a Russian spy. Regardless of whether that was true or not, Philips obviously couldn't hire someone like that. So Casimir politely declined Brinkman's request. We consider the support we have given him as money well spent, Casimir said, and are willing to continue supporting him for another 5 months, that is, until the end of March, when he will have graduated. But that was all they could do. Who was this Finnish physicist? Was he really a spy? The chances of us ever knowing for sure are slim. What is clear, however, is that people had been suspicious of the Finnish physicist for many years. Gåsström grew up in Canada, the child of communist parents who had emigrated in 1918. But after participating in labor disturbances in Vancouver in 1932, he was deported. The family then went to live in the Karelo-Finnish Soviet Socialist Republic that had emerged after the Civil War. In other words, in Russia. Here he also studied physics. During the war, he had performed special duties for the Russian army, but in 1946 he returned to Finland with his American fiancée. The couple claimed to have been persecuted in Russia. Once in Helsinki, Gåsström went to work for the leftist Lennart Simons, who was building a Van de Graaff generator, an early particle accelerator, and who was further involved in atomic energy. That was when distrust of the Finnish national began to grow. Indeed, Gåsström spent a lot of time in Paris at Orsay. There, he followed the development of nuclear energy, a project led by the communist Frédéric Joliot-Curie. And that, in turn, attracted the attention of the French Secret Service. He is also said to have helped a well-known spy defect to the Soviet Union. Italian citizen Bruno Pontecorvo had worked on large atomic projects during and after the war, as had well-known spy Fuchs. When suspicions arose against him, Pontecorvo caught a plane to Helsinki in 1950. There, at the airport, he was met by a mysterious couple who spoke fluent English. The same couple helped him cross the border in the boot of a car that looked suspiciously like the striking American Buick that Gåsström owned. The CIA also reckoned that it was indeed Gåsström who had helped the Italian cross the Finnish border. The rumours swelled, and when Gåström's boss was also discredited, Brinkman brought him to the Netherlands. How Brinkman had heard of him is unknown, and records of his time in the Finnish lab have disappeared. Perhaps he was just a bargain, an experienced researcher for the price of a PhD student. But the years passed and the PhD research yielded nothing. Here is what did happen. Brinkman put his protégé in touch with important colleagues, the aforementioned Hendrik Casimir, the head of Philips Physics Laboratory, as well as the director of CERN, Cor Bakker. The Dutch security service was also catching on by this point. The US CIA and Britain's MI6 asked for further investigation. Today, the archives of the Inland Security Service reveal that Agent EC2 had talked to some of the Finnish national's colleagues in 1956. He accomplished almost nothing, the agent reported. He will probably never graduate with a PhD. He also said that Gåsström wasn't very well liked at the laboratory because of his brashness and bravado. The agent also talked to Gåsström himself, but despite evasive answers, there was no reason to take further action. But Casimir withdrew his financial support. Cor Bakker also turned down a request from Brinkman to give the Finnish national a job. Finland was not a member of CERN, he said, and that meant Gåström's time in Groningen was at an end. But MI6 continued to follow him, even when he started working for the International Atomic Energy Agency under then Deputy Director Vladimir Migulin in Vienna in April 1959. And also when his career there ended a year later and Gåsström seemed to disappear from the face of the earth for a while. He turned up again, anyway, in Russia this time, where Migulin got him a job. Yet even in Russia he continued to roam from place to place. Even though people kept recommending him for jobs, he'd eventually leave because of conflicts he had with the rest of the staff. It's difficult to say with any certainty if he was a spy. In any case, he gathered technical information and had positioned himself well in the field of nuclear electronics and semiconductors, Professor Emeritus Hans Wilschut wrote about him in the Tijdschrift voor Natuurkunde. In the Soviet Union, people automatically assumed that he had secretly collected intelligence, and he never bothered to contradict that. Brinkman lost touch with his former protégé. When the contract with the International Atomic Energy Agency ended in 1960, Brinkman asked what he was going to do. "I don't know," said Gåsström, "but I'm going on holiday with my family first." This episode was written by Christien Boomsma and researched by Hans Wilschut. Sound by Rob van der Wal. Voice Tom Wilcox. More information can be found in the show notes.